This happened around 20 years ago. After dropping out of high school, I was working a few part-time jobs. They were pretty much consuming every day of my life. The school I attended was one of those super high-pressure ones, where everyone's parents are forcing their kids to study all of the time so they can graduate and get into all the best universities. All of my friends were studying just as much as I was working, so I guess that's why all my friendships from school dwindled away. Maybe they didn't want to hang out with a dropout, or maybe that's what their parents didn't want. The only friends I had were the ones I made at work. Most of these friends were on average about 2 years older than me. One night, one of these friends mentioned a place in the next city over, which was supposed to be haunted. It was a hotel. He was talking up the idea of all of us going and checking it out. The story goes, the hotel was abandoned during construction due to financial reasons. The hotel was close to being fully built and they just left it. It has been rumored that it is a local hangout for troublemakers and gangs. The rumor goes that there was a kind of lynching in the unused hotel. A woman was beaten and subsequently killed. There's also a rumor of a suicide on the roof. Again, another female. We all planned to go and see if we could see anything creepy there that night, so I had dinner and waited for my older friends to come and pick me up. We decided to go in the dead of night because 1, it would be a bit spookier, and 2, hopefully we would be harder to spot by the police or curtain-twitching neighbors in the dark. The hotel was located just off a national highway, and thanks to the street lights and the lights off the passing cars, we could see pretty well. It seemed like a completely normal hotel, and I was a little disappointed, yet somewhat relieved. We snuck in through a broken window and headed to the rooftop. It was then that we learned even though the hotel looked fully constructed from the outside, there wasn't very much of anything on the inside. It was just bare concrete in there. There was no sense of life. It didn't look like it was part of reality, almost. Like the back rooms, I guess. I still wasn't the least bit scared at this point. None of us 4 claimed to have the second sight either. We couldn't sense the presence of the paranormal at all, and we didn't have any idea what we were supposed to be looking for either. I mean, should we have tried to do a seance, or a kokori-san, or something? We didn't know. So we looked around on the roof for a while and found a few things. Clearly, someone had had a little picnic party up there. And there were signs of something else they might have been up to up there, if you know what I mean. Finding this stuff caused us to kind of forget where we were and relax a little. We began to get a bit louder and a bit more comfortable. We brought alcohol, so we had a drink on the roof, looking out at the lake behind the hotel. It was pretty sweet. We messed around drinking for about 2 hours or so, and then we got bored and decided to go check out the hotel. I guess the booze had given us a little more confidence. When we got to the ground floor, we realized that there was a basement that we hadn't seen on the first look around. I was quite surprised that we missed it. It was almost as if it had suddenly appeared. There was now a bit of an atmosphere in the empty building. We all agreed that something felt different, something we couldn't put our finger on. One of my friends then decided that he would be the first to say, "Let's go down there." So we began our descent into the basement. We went pretty slowly. It was incredibly dark down there. It was narrow and there were puddles of water down there. Even though it was summer, it felt downright freezing in the basement. It wasn't like any of the other rooms in the hotel. We were solely reliant on the light from the flashlights we had. We approached a door at the end of the passageway, and then I felt a chill, the likes of which I haven't felt before or since, on my back. It was as if this icy chill went straight through me. I still remember it as I typed these words. It was like a current of electricity passed through my body. I felt some kind of convulsion which started at the base of my spine and then ran up to my shoulders. As this happened, one of my friends uttered a sharp yelp of horror. I was about to say to everyone, "Let's get out of here," but I found that I couldn't speak. Like I said, there were 4 of us, and I was at the front with a friend, and it was one of the two in the back who made that yelp. I turned to see him running at full speed back towards the stairs. He was screaming the most maddening scream. It echoed around the narrow passage. It was truly disturbing. I looked at my friend at the front, who was the oldest, and I guess the most confident and strongest of our little group. Even he couldn't keep his composure, and when he started running back toward the stairs, I made sure I was right next to him. We didn't stop until we got back to where we had parked the car. When we got back to the car, the friend who ran first was still clearly upset and frightened by something. It was really weird to see someone older than you at that age literally shake with fear. When he calmed down a little, we asked him about what had happened, and he said that he saw something. He said that he saw the face of a woman right at the back of the hallway when he turned around. She was on the right side of the stairs that we had climbed down in the place where we didn't shine our flashlights the first time we came down. He said that her face was expressionless and blank, but he saw others, a man and another woman. He said that there could have been 5 or 6 faces. It was like they came right out of the shadows. He said his fight or flight instinct kicked in and he just bolted. Something deep down told him to get out as soon as possible. We quickly left the place because even though we didn't see what he did, I'm certain that we all experienced that same chill. I am convinced that we weren't alone down there. We went to an all-night restaurant and stayed up until the sun came up, and then we all went home. Nothing really changed for me after I went to that hotel. People kept on saying it was haunted, and some say there's a basement, while others vehemently claim there is no basement. I never went back to find out, so I can't tell you. All I know is I was in that basement. I moved to a bigger city after a few years and lost touch with the friends I made at work. I did bump into the sister of a friend who saw the faces in the basement, and I asked about him. Sadly, he took his own life in the lake by the hotel. He left no note. I often think about that guy and that hotel, sometimes by choice and other times not. This happened when I was in university. My university wasn't in the same town or state that I lived in, so I couldn't commute. I wasn't exactly rich either, so I began the difficult hunt for a cheap apartment. I went to view an apartment which was in my price range, and I was really hoping to get it because I couldn't find anything else quite as cheap as that apartment, especially in the area. I felt like I was on to a winner. I was a little apprehensive, but it was the only place I could afford. When I was shown the apartment, it was described as pretty old and dingy. Not amazing, but not terrible. One thing I noticed that was strange was that the bathroom door seemed new. Its paint wasn't as faded as the rest of the paint in the apartment. I asked the landlord about it, and he said that they had to change the door because sometimes it got stuck and wouldn't open. Fair enough, I thought. The first 3 months flew by without issue, and I was enjoying my own space. That all ended one night when I woke up in the dead of night to hear a scratching sound. I went to go and check for the cause of that sound. I turned on the light and got out of bed, and suddenly the scratching stopped. That spooked me a bit, but since it stopped and I was tired, I just ignored it, turned out the light and went back to bed. The next day I was watching TV in the afternoon, and I heard the scratching again. I pressed the mute button and waited. There was the scratching again. I stomped on the floor, and the scratching stopped. It sounded like it could be cockroaches or some sort of bug. Thinking back on it, I realized how wrong I was. It was a very strange sound. I heard those noises every day from then on. It was never at the same time. The scratching came in random intervals. I started to spend more and more time out of my apartment because of this. I guessed that those noises were probably still occurring, even when no one was home. One night when I was in the apartment, the noise was so awful it really got to me. It woke me up in the middle of the night. Another sound began to accompany the scratching sound. It was a gurgling. Whatever was making it seemed to be either frightened or stressed. I got out of bed and began to search for the cause of those creepy noises. Something deep down told me to leave it and go in search of it in the morning. I was now a bit freaked out by it. When morning came the next day, I got up as usual and started watching TV. I was a hard-working student, as you can tell. I was still thinking at this point that I had an infestation in the apartment. I heard the noises and I shot to my feet. It was coming from the bathroom. It was like something was scratching at the bathroom door. I banged on the door hoping it would stop it, like the stomp had stopped it before. But this time I was wrong. I knocked on the door and then the scratching changed to a scuffling kind of tapping. I smacked my palm on the door and it didn't stop. The tapping continued. I didn't like it at all. The tapping grew louder to a banging sound. The thudding on the inside of the door was making the door swell with impact and vibrating through the floor. I knew that it wasn't any infestation. I knew that there was no one on the other side of that door, too. Usually there was no one in the apartment building during the day except for me and the landlord. I stood there, frozen. I was worried that the landlord was going to come up to my apartment, shout at me for the noise, and then suddenly, abruptly, it stopped. I had to check. I didn't want to, but I needed to know if something was in there. I opened the door as slowly as I could. I was bracing myself for whatever was going to happen next. I saw long scratches and dents on the other side of the door. I was really scared and I couldn't stand being alone in my apartment, so I headed down to the landlord's apartment, and when he answered the door, I blurted out what had just happened. He didn't seem that fazed. And then the reason for that was revealed. It was as if he had heard my story time and time again. He followed me upstairs so I could show him the scratches. He sighed and then told me about a former resident. According to the landlord, there was a woman who tried to take her own life by using a poisonous gas in the bathroom. Apparently, during her attempt, she changed her mind and tried to get out of the bathroom. Like the landlord explained at the start of this story, the old bathroom door sometimes didn't open and it got stuck. She couldn't get out. The police's suspicion is that the young woman began to kick and bang with her fists against the door to try to get the attention of anyone nearby. Sadly, she was unable to escape, and even if someone happened by, they wouldn't have been able to get inside because her front door was locked. In her final moments, however long or short they were, she must have dropped to her knees and fell forward onto her stomach. She scratched at the door, leaving marks like the ones I saw that day. The sound that I had been hearing was maybe the sound of her scratching. The landlord then said, "Look, I have a lot of tenants in here, and I tell them the same thing when they realize that an accident happened in here. I probably should have told you, hey, sorry. Look, the thing is, if you hear the scratching and you show her that you noticed it and that you're aware of it, she always stops. Same with the banging. I can paint over the scratch marks if you want. No charge. How about that?" I was so angry. He should have told me before I moved in. This wasn't a joke to me. I told him that I was out of there. I went upstairs to get my things. I threw as much as I could into a suitcase and I burst into the streets. I'm now completely free from all mysterious phenomenon, but I often think about the poor woman and the noises I heard in that apartment.